Hello and welcome back to the Women's Football Chat. Today we turn our attention to the top of the WSL table and more specifically on Arsenal because last weekend, of course, Chelsea, they cruised to a 3-0 victory over Everton. Manchester City was a little bit stuttery, but they got the win over the line in the end. But Arsenal were involved in a very disappointing collapse away at West Ham. So we're going to break down the game, why they lost, what's going wrong for them this season, and then finish off by talking about Jonas Eidevall and whether he'll be sacked. So let's talk about the game. Harry, what are your thoughts on the match? Obviously, we streamed it. Quite a good game of football.
Yeah, it was very good. I think, first of all, credit to West Ham. They played superbly. They were disciplined. They were regimented. They did exactly what they knew what they had to do to win the game, and they executed it brilliantly. For Arsenal, however, it was really poor. It was another classic Arsenal game where, for 45 minutes, they had so many chances in that first half, didn't take any of them, then eventually got a goal, towards the end of the half. Thought, okay, maybe they're in now, they'll be absolutely fine. Didn't score again, missed more and more chances. Honestly, countless times they missed a very, very good opportunity in front of goal.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, in the second half, it came back to bite them.
Well, I think that is the best way to look at it, isn't it? I think the two halves were distinctly different. And let's talk about that first half then, because Arsenal were the dominant side. They created all the chances, they had all the possession, and it really looked like they would take West Ham to the cleaners. But I thought it'd be like last week, where they struggled to put chances away, but eventually they did, and then they dominate from there. But once that goal came, it had the opposite effect. West Ham didn't give in and go, well, we've conceded now, that's it. And I think it's due to the timing. The time was opportune because they went straight into the half-time break where the West Ham manager, Raheem Skinner, I believe, was able to, say a few words, get the message across, and that changed the course of the game because suddenly they came out for the second half with a whole new life. They looked rejuvenated, and that made the key difference because they came out and they fought in the second half, and that's what the difference was. West Ham wanted it more. And I think that's the key difference at Arsenal right now. Because the first half, you can't really fault them bar their finishing. Miedemar should have scored at least one, maybe two goals. Russo did score, but you could argue she should have had another in that first half. So you can't really fault them other than that finishing. The second half, though, they looked spineless. They didn't really fight for it. And West Ham used that to their advantage. And full credit to them for doing so. And a huge 2-1 victory for the Hammers. But it's not indicative really of Arsenal's season so far. What we saw in the game, what went wrong for them on Sunday is very different to what's not happened or what's gone wrong for them in the season so far. So what we've seen so far is Arsenal really struggle to break down low blocks. So a low block is where the opposition sit really deep, really narrow, and make it difficult to break them down and to score goals. Now what Arsenal do quite well is play against teams who sit high. So you notice when they play Chelsea or Manchester City, when they play quite a high line on that halfway line, they can play those balls in behind that Leah Williamson is so effective at doing. There's loads of space for attackers to run into, and it creates problems. They're also very good at generating transitions. However, when the team sits really deep, like West Ham did on Sunday, where it's pretty much a 5-4-1 at times, it's very difficult to break that down. But Arsenal are particularly not very good at it. And I think that's the biggest difference between Arsenal, City and Chelsea, is that Arsenal usually can't break down low blocks, and therefore they do have slip-ups against sides that Chelsea and City don't. However, that wasn't the case really on Sunday because Arsenal did break down West Ham quite effectively in that first half. It was just that they didn't finish their chances, which it's interesting to see because I don't think this week's result can be blamed on a tactical thing, or I think it can be quite easily blamed on the fact they didn't put away their chance in the first half.
Yeah, no, and I feel like and the blame's a big thing for me because I think for Arsenal, you have to address it head on. There's a lot of people saying Arsenal shot a penalty in the first half. West Ham's goals were a penalty and a big error from the keeper. But realistically, even with those things happening, Arsenal should have still won that game by an absolute canter.
And while Miedemar made that huge difference last week, she scored from range against Liverpool. This week, she broke into the 6-yard box. It's around the 30th minute. Broke into the 6-yard box. Took it past Haas Sissoko. Really composed to do that, actually. Because she could have had a shot. She sees Sissoko coming with a tackle and just slides it across. Goes past her. Then she had to shoot. But she waits a second. Waits 2 seconds. That's the hesitation period. Hayashi has got back in, and it was a fantastic tackle, to be fair to her. All credit to her for that challenge, because she could have easily got that wrong in an Arsenal penalty. But she makes that tackle, chance is gone, and that really was indicative of Arsenal's day. They couldn't finish those chances. They just have to release the trigger a little bit earlier there. They overthink it. They overplay it as well at times. We saw that in the Liverpool game. That's why they can't really break through teams, because they don't go for it. They don't try and take a player on. They'll go, oh, there's a player there, turn around and we'll work it back round. Now, while that can be quite effective in holding on to possession, it's not always the most effective at generating chances. So, yeah, I do think, though, this week Arsenal were very good at breaking down West Ham. Whether that can be blamed on the fact it was a bit more of a 3-back, which is more easy to break down than a traditional 4-back, I would say. Obviously, at times it's sat in a 5, which is very difficult to break down. But at times the wing-backs were caught high, in which case there was space to exploit. So I do think this is a game that they really should have been winning quite comfortably, and they threw it away. In terms of West Ham's goals, well, of course, the penalty, it's dubious. I think that, very dubious at best, but I do think it was a penalty. I know there's been a lot of contention there.
It's on the line.
But yeah, as long as that is in the box, which it looked like it was, at least from the replays I've seen, then it's a clear penalty. So for me, that makes sense. I get why Arsenal fans are frustrated, because they should have had a penalty for the handball, but equally, Arsenal shouldn't have had to rely on that to win a game against West Ham.
West Ham could have still scored the 2 goals they did on Sunday, and Arsenal should have still won the game, even if those goals happened. And obviously, again, you talk about game state, talk about all this. If Arsenal are 3-0 up at half time, West Ham probably don't come out with the same energy and don't score the 2 goals. So it's all a matter of hindsight.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting shift in game state, because usually when a team scores, so again, game state, for those that maybe aren't aware, game state is basically how we refer to game-changing moments. So a change in game state is when there's a goal or a change in personnel or a player sent off. So change the number of people playing or a change in the scoreline. Now, obviously the Alessia Russo goal, that's a huge change in game state. However, it had the opposite effect, because usually when your team scores, the opposition will have to push forward, so they open up a bit more and they make it a bit more difficult. But by West Ham pushing forward, they actually put too much pressure on Arsenal for Arsenal to deal with. So Arsenal, therefore, and Arsenal didn't really weren't combative enough. West Ham came at them, and Arsenal couldn't handle that pressure. They conceded 2 goals. As for the second goal, I think a lot of blame has to be put onto Manuela Zinsberger.
Terrible goalkeeping.
It was a really bizarre decision. If you're going to come for it there, you've got to claim it or punch it away from danger. She punched it down to Hawa Sissoko, and fair play to her because it was a really good finish. But I think there's a lot of question marks over Zinsberger. I get why they didn't sign Mary Earps in January, but I do still find it a weird decision to not to give Zinsberger a new contract and not get Mary Earps, because I think that's a clear upgrade and a player that wanted to join. So that doesn't make much sense to me. I know a few people were saying, well, it doesn't, she's already 29, so she's not got many years left. Arsenal prefer a younger goalkeeper. And then they went and got Sarah Buhadi, who's 37, as their backup goalkeeper. So I get she's a backup, but still, that doesn't run with me. I also don't, that's a whole other issue. I don't know why they signed Sarah Buhadi. I'd have signed a young goalkeeper to play backup to Zinsberger, but yeah, fair enough, whatever. That's a separate point. But yeah, it was really poor goalkeeping from Zinsberger. Again, there's question marks over it. I do think she's been scapegoated a few times this season by Arsenal fans. I don't think she was at fault for the Tottenham game.
No.
I don't think there's a lot she could have done about that goal, and Arsenal should have been better. They were, they are a stronger side than Tottenham. They should have got that game over the line. So I don't think you can blame her too much in that one. But I do think today a lot of fault does lie on her for that second goal, because while Arsenal were under the cosh, she basically gifted them a goal. So I think there's still question marks there. And when we're talking about why Arsenal can't compete for the titles, they're the kind of things that we talk about, right? Players that just aren't at that level.
Yeah, no, it is a really bizarre scenario when you have your starting goalkeeper has been a bit of an up and down season. You have the opportunity to sign the best goalkeeper in the world, and you turn it down.
Hell of a shout.
I think I'm pretty valid, but it is a really weird one. It's a terrible error from the goalkeeper. Why you're coming out of your 6-yard box to get the ball in the first place is bizarre. If you're going to come that way, either catch it, never punch it into the ground. That is a really poor error from a...
It just felt like she didn't get enough contact behind the punch.
Yeah. I think the one thing I will say is that, as you say, she gets scapegoated. Again, all the focus on this loss will be on Catley for giving away the penalty, or the referee for giving the penalty, or Zinsberger for the error. No one's going to... and I think this does come maybe down to a bit more favouritism. No one's going to blame Miedema for missing the chances, or Mead, or their dog, or Russo, or anyone. I'm not going to blame any of them for missing chances and not scoring goals. because they're their favourites.
It's the theme over the season. You know, Alessia Russo, who I don't think is someone who should be ashamed of her performance. I think she played quite well against West Ham. But over the season, she definitely should have been criticised more than she has been, because I don't think she scored enough goals for Arsenal. And a lot of people say, well, she's still up there as one of the best strikers in the league. She's still, got high football ratings. But if you're going to fight for the league, you need a proven goal scorer. You need someone who's going to get a lot of goals. That's another key difference. If you look at Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester City, Chelsea have Lauren James and City have Khadija Shaw, the top two in the goal scoring charts right now. And that's the key difference. Is they've both those sides have got players who can pull them out of the gutter, who can see this game where they're struggling maybe to get a goal, they're being forced back by opposition, and they've got players that can change it. Arsenal don't have those at the moment. Now, while Beth Mead and Miedemar and Russo may have that ability, they've not demonstrated it this season at all. So that's the big difference. Arsenal don't have those game-changing players that Chelsea and Manchester City do.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, a lot of people say, well, Russo's just joined the club and Mead and Miedemar have come back from injury, and I get that. But as a manager, and maybe this falls on Eidevall, maybe it falls on the players, but as a manager, you adapt to that. If you know that in your front, three of your front four, two have just come back from big, very horrible injuries, and one has just joined the club, you have to accommodate for that. We keep, obviously I know Miedemar scored and Russo's, and I think Russo's starting's fine, Miedemar starting okay, but we've seen barely anything from Mead since she came back, but obviously she starts every week because she's Beth Mead, and I don't know, she posts pictures about her dog and things like that. But I think Ford was very quiet as well in the West Ham game.
Ford's had a bit of a quiet season, to be honest. I've not seen, other than the Chelsea game, I've not been particularly enamoured by her performances.
The problem is we've got these players who have been very quiet this season for Arsenal that are starting every week because they're the big names. At one point, also I get they want to win the title, you want to put your best 11 out there, but if they're not playing very well, you've got to look at because you look at the bench, you've got your Black Stennises, your Lacasse, you've got players who can come on or even start the game, that can score goals. You can win you games like West Ham. They are 11th in the league. They were in the relegation zone below newly.
They started the day at 11th. Obviously, their victory season climbed up to 9th, which is huge for them. But
absolutely terrible result.
I couldn't agree more. I think that regarding the chance creation side as well for Arsenal, I don't know how they function without Emily Fox. I genuinely don't, because she was sensational against West Ham.
Yeah.
It's not, she wasn't really at fault for any of the goals. I can't really blame her for any of the reason Arsenal lost, and she put in some really good balls. I don't know how they function without her, because who creates chances in this team? Because Ford is a somewhat decent creator, but she hasn't shown it a lot this season. Mead's an inside forward, so she doesn't create chances. She cuts in and takes them herself. You've got Victoria Pelova, I guess, has been a good creator, but again, she was quiet on Sunday, and I think she's had a really good season, but since Christmas hasn't really turned up in games. So I don't know how they functioned. I guess Katie McCabe also is a good creator, but I do think they were struggling to create chances. Now they're struggling to put away chances. So it seems that one side of our soul's one issue, another one emerges. But let's talk about then Jonas Eidevall, because he is the title, he is the thumbnail, and he is the talk of a lot of people right now. Do you think he's good enough for Arsenal? Because I think next season is Arsenal, Manchester City, Manchester United have the greatest chance of winning the WSL they've had in years, with Emma Hayes leaving, of course. Are Arsenal in the right position, or in the perfect position to take advantage of that? What do you think?
No, they're absolutely not. And the problem is, this season, Chelsea are better on paper, but the way it's unfolded in the fact that Arsenal have drew to Manchester City and beaten Chelsea. I don't understand how they're not top of the league, because if you manage to beat both those clubs, you should. It should be mandatory that you are then top, because you should beat the rest. And I think that's Arsenal's problem, is I've never known a manager in Eidevall to be so good at beating Chelsea, Man City, two of the best teams in the world. A Chelsea team that have won the title 6 times, 4 on the bounce now, and are looking to do the quadruple this year. He beat them, and he's still not top of the league. He's absolutely beyond me.
It's very much a case of he's obviously a very good manager, and I just think there needs to be a bit more refinement to beat the smaller sides every now and then. I look at Arsenal, and it's not unheard of for sides to be able to beat big teams and not little teams. It's difference in play style. Arsenal are very good when they can, when the other team are pressed very high and they can get in behind. They can generate those transitions, but they have to start generating those transitions a bit more frequently and a bit more artificially. They need to invite the press and play in behind it. That's how they're going to play, similar to how Liverpool do in the Premier League. They're a good example because that's how they've played for years. They invite the pressure, then they play through that pressure. They lure you into a false sense of security. Oh, we're forcing them back, and then bang, 4 passes and they're in behind. That's what Arsenal need to be better at doing for sides that want to sit deep. They've got to encourage them out because if not, they're not going to break them down. You know, other sides like Chelsea can break teams down by, you know, getting players in between the lines, by being able to having players that can unpick defences, who can hit goals from range, who can play sneaky little balls in behind or over the top. Arsenal don't really have those players. So if they're going to play the brand of football they want, they need to refine that for teams that sit deeper. Because as we've seen, they can struggle in those games. But I think Arsenal have been sloppy this season. That, you know, the fact that they've dropped points on 4 occasions and their 3 losses this season have been Liverpool, West Ham and Tottenham. I think they drew with Man United as well. So I don't know. I think they are the best of the rest type teams. I think West Ham are lower than they should be. I actually think West Ham are quite a good side, as we saw at the weekend. It's, you know, especially now that they've added Sadorski, Gorey and Christy Mewis. I think they're actually quite a solid team. And maybe you could argue they could get up to 7th at this rate. They are only 2 points behind, I think, Leicester. I think Leicester on 13.
Yeah.
So they're very well. I think Leicester and Villa are both on 13 points. West Ham up to 11 now. So I do think West Ham could be considered one of the best of the rest. But there's a key problem if you can beat the top 2, but you can't beat the next 4. So I don't know. I feel like there's clearly a problem with Eidevall's tactics, but it's not against the top 2 sides. So
and that's the problem. And you sum up well there. This game will be labelled as a shock result, but when you really deepen, you think about it, is it this kind of result a loss to a lower league?
I think it's been due for Arsenal because they have been quite fortunate in these type games.
0-0 last week against Liverpool, we thought maybe is there a chance they drop points here? They got saved by Miedema's one to strike, and then they went on to. There was a couple of games as well.
I was going to say the weekend before that, I think they were quite fortunate to come away with a victory against Everton. That was only 2-1 in that game.
Exactly.
Quite a narrow win.
And that's the problem. And I feel like if you're the Arsenal manager, I mean, obviously, so last year, they won the Conti Cup.
Well, that's Eidevall's only honour as Arsenal manager.
And for me, that's not good enough.
Obviously, he's got, I believe, 3 Swedish league titles, but yeah, he's not won a title with Arsenal, obviously, in the Emma Hayes era, which I get it's the Emma Hayes era, but you'd have claimed another FA Cup or something.
To play for, there's Conti Cup, League Cups to play for, and I mean, this year they didn't even make the UCL proper. They didn't even reach the actual Champions League until they knocked out in the playoffs, or the qualification round. Sorry,
preliminaries. Yeah,
that's it. That's just not good enough for being classed as the second best team in England. That's not good enough.
And if they are third again, they are going to have to go through 2 rounds again.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, are they in a great position to take advantage of the fact Emma Hayes is leaving? No, because I think City, to be honest, at this rate, if Eidevall is still an Arsenal job next season, City could win it by a canter. Because United won't challenge.
It depends what Chelsea do, obviously.
Oh, yeah,
Chelsea could still win it.
Like Chelsea leaving the league.
Chelsea not having a year off. They're
I
just
think
losing
you
the
could
match.
put any old geezer in charge and there'd be enough quality on the Chelsea pitch.
I think Chelsea are very good, but I think Emma Hayes has been, the orchestration of all that, and it will be a big transition for Chelsea to move into new management. It very much depends on who replaces her. But with Eidevall, I do think Eidevall will be here next season. And that may be something that makes Arsenal fans quite frustrated, because I know there's comments on our videos. I've seen a lot of talk on social media that Eidevall isn't the man to lead them forwards. But for one, I don't think he's a bad coach at all. And I think in a league without Emma Hayes, there's a very good chance that they do actually win it next season. Depends obviously who Chelsea get. My other problem is I don't know who replaces him. Because you can't go back to Laura Harvey and try and bring her in. She's not going to do it. The only way she'll be coming back to the WSL is if Chelsea want her. I don't see them being able to compete with Chelsea for Stoney. I don't see why Geraldes would reject offers in the NWSL to go to Arsenal. I think if he was going to come to the WSL, it would be to go to Chelsea. So they're always going to get second fiddle to Chelsea right now. So why, when Chelsea are going to have to go through this transitional phase, would you do that as well? No. because I don't think United are going to be up there unless they sack Skinner, in which case they'll be in a transitional stage. So I do think Arsenal are poised to take the fight to City next season if Chelsea fall off, or at least take the fight to Chelsea if Chelsea's still up there. What is the difference between Eidevall and Taylor? Because I don't think either are particularly top-level managers. They're very good, but are they Emma Hayes level?
I don't think breathe. So. He needs to calm down. Get some breathing, some exercise in there. But yeah, at the end of the day, people will slate Eidevall, but this year they're still in the Conti Cup quarters. Yeah. They're still in the FA Cup, and obviously they're still within a shout of the league title. And now obviously I know they've lost 3 games, and no side has ever won the league. They won the WSL by losing more than 3 games.
But we've never had a season that's as competitive, I'd argue.
And and realistically, they could maybe go on a run with not losing again. But the problem, I think, if they beat City and Chelsea for the second time round, they're back. They are still in the title fight, just about, and they're still in both domestic cup competitions. They could come away at least. They should, for me, come away with 1 trophy this year at least.
Yeah, I think they could.
Because you have to bear in mind, Chelsea will want that Champions League so badly. And I think if you go to Emma Hayes or you go to Chelsea, you win the Champions League if you throw away the Conti Cup. They're throwing that Conti Cup away so quickly, and then that should be Arsenal.
Obviously, they'd love to win every trophy, and I don't think...
They could win the quadruple.
Yeah, they could do that. But, yeah, I do think there's a good opportunity for Arsenal to take advantage of Chelsea's fixture congestion, because there's going to be a lot of games if they do go deep in the Champions League. So, yeah, I just don't see who replaces Jonas Eidevall right now. I think he is probably the best fit. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
the club. No, I think stick with Eidevall for now.
Get another bloke called suspiciously very similar to Jonas Eidevall. His name's slightly different, but yeah, I think I don't see him leaving yet. In terms of what do they need to fight for the title? What does this Arsenal squad need to add to fight for the title? Why we're going on a little, but what do you think they need to add?
One word: shoot. Honestly,
on the tactics board.
On Sunday, if they'd shot more, they'd have scored more.
Yeah.
If it was so stupid to save it, more shots you have, the more goals you score. And relax the whole team. Get a meditation person in there. Get some yoga instructor going. The whole team just needs to relax.
Yeah, they need to score more goals. I think the one thing I will add before we end is that they are one of the best defensive sides in the WSL. Stats don't lie. They've 100%. Kept a lot of clean sheets this season. They're quite a lot of their games. They limit the sides that they're playing against to very low scoring games. The problem is as well, though, with that, they haven't scored enough goals. No. I think they're now 10 behind Chelsea, or maybe more than that, in terms of goal differential. And given the fact that they've conceded, I think, less than Chelsea at the moment, that doesn't look very good. So I just think Arsenal need to score more goals. But that's something Eidevall's got to figure out tactically. How do you score more goals while maintaining this defensive shape? And actually, do they need to be a bit more ambitious, a bit more aggressive in attack? Because West Ham came at them. Yeah. Which is not a lot of sides down. West Ham came at them and they got 2 goals. So, be interesting to see how the rest of the season pans out for Arsenal. I don't think they're out of the title race yet. I think people are very prematurely ruling them out of action. If City beat Chelsea in 2 weeks' time, then suddenly we find ourselves in a situation where Arsenal are 3 points off the top. Yeah. So I don't think the season's anywhere near done. By the same token, you could say if Chelsea beat City in 2 weeks' time, then everyone's out of the title race. Yeah. But it's definitely not done yet. Arsenal play City this weekend in the FA Cup. That's going to be a really interesting one. Arsenal, obviously, on the day this goes out, they'll be facing London City Lionesses. They're 2 crucial games. Because I don't think they're going to win the WSL at this point. I don't think they're out of it, but I don't think they're going to win it. Obviously, they don't have Europe. So they're their 2 chances at trophies. Now, City's going to be a very difficult game on Sunday. We are live for that one, so join us on this channel live on Sunday.
And tonight.
Well, we're not live for the London City Lionesses Arsenal game, but we will be live if you want to join us covering all the Conti Cup action. But yeah, I think it's pivotal they get 2 wins this week.
Very much so.
Because they have to win something this year. But then I think the same thing can be said of City. I think it's pivotal City get wins. So it's going to be an interesting week for the women's game. Make sure to join us for all of it. We'll be live, as Harry said, tonight for Chelsea Sunderland, but we'll also be keeping tabs on all the other Conti Cup fixtures. And then we are live again this Sunday for Arsenal versus Manchester City. It's a 12:30 kickoff. As far as I'm aware, so we'll be live from 12:15. But that is everything from us this week. Anything else to add, Harry?
Nope.
Well, if that is everything, then that is good. Make sure to check out the video on screen now if you want to keep watching. It's covering Harry's face. And thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.